Good morning, friends. Welcome back to Random Hearts. Today we're in the backyard and we are going to do some maintenance on both my annual and my perennial flowers. Now, annual flowers are the flowers that you have to replant every single year. They will bloom. They will bloom multiple times, but they will try to produce seed if you leave the blooms on. Perennial flowers are the flowers that grow every single year. They come back for you, but those also need maintenance. So today I'm going to talk about a couple of terms that I've probably said on this channel a couple of times already, but the first one is deadheading. Deadheading is where you remove those blooms that are dead, dying, or diseased to promote more growth, prevent disease and fungal problems, and to just make it look better. Aesthetically, a plant doesn't look very good when it has a lot of dead and dying foliage on it or flowers. So removing those spent blooms will also promote some more growth in the plant. Now, not every plant can be deadheaded, and if you are looking at your plant tags, they will say whether they need to be deadheaded or not. But today I thought I would go over a few of the plants in my yard that I deadhead. I also have some perennials in the yard. Those are plants that come back every single year, or at least try to come back every single year. And those plants typically only bloom one time in the seasonal cycle, but they will come back the next year. I can do some things in the season though to help promote more regrowth, and those can be on things like daisies or salvia, and I have both that I need to deal with today. So let's go ahead and walk around the yard. I have done some of this footage ahead of time, so there might be a couple of things out of sequence in here, but I'm going to try to put this all together in a video. Deadheading does not happen all on the same day, but I thought I'd take you around today and show you some of my process on a daily basis of how I deal with my flower garden. I do need some tools today. So I've got my trash bin. I've got a couple of pairs of snips and bypassed pruners. I'm also going to have some gloves just in case I get into anything that has some sticky, sappy, or thorny type situations. And then of course I've got my hat with me. We are kind of on an overcast day, which is beautiful. So I'm very grateful for that. I do have a little bit of cloud cover, but we are supposed to get up into the 90s again today. So I want to get this done quickly. Like I said, I do have a little bit of footage from previous, so I'll try to put this in as we go. But let's talk about deadheading first. We're going to start right here with my annuals in this flower bed. These are all marigolds. This is probably my largest section of marigolds. I did start all of these from seed this year, and there is a difference in varieties here. This one right here is a lemon gem. They're a very small petite marigold, and these are the larger marigolds. These are the Queen Sophias. One of these varieties does not need to be deadheaded, and the other one does. This variety right here, I do not need to take those spent blooms off. It does not matter. They flush out new blooms right over the top of the old ones, and so you never see them. Now this variety here, they do need to be deadheaded. The problem is if I leave their spent blooms on the flower, they will produce seed and they will eventually stop flowering. And I do not want that to happen. I want continual flowers the entire season. So let me show you what I'm looking for when I deadhead my marigolds.
You want to avoid cutting the fresh blooms. This is a bud on a marigold and it is not ready to open yet, but it will be open in a couple of days and it will turn into this big, beautiful blossom. This right here has probably 1 day of progress over the last one, and this is probably ready to bloom in the next day or so. Now you want to avoid all of these. These are fresh and you do not want to cut them. I took these blossoms off of the plant, but these are the blossoms you're looking for. They're a little bit droopy. Their petals are downward turned and the centers of the blossom are a little bit dried out. That is a spent bloom. It's on its way to dying and it will no longer do the plant any good. They'll just eventually start looking like this where they get droopier and sloppier, and then they will completely dry out like this one right here. This one actually is to the point where I can take the bottom of the petal structure off and expose all of those seeds. And here in just a second, I am going to do just that. And those can easily be removed just to show you how easy it is for a marigold to self-seed. It just needs to dry out, and all of those are viable marigold seeds. Now, upon first glance, it doesn't look like much in this bed needs to be deadheaded, but there are a few plants in here that are showing those signs. This is a viable blossom. This is very fresh. You can see all of the petals on the outside are uplifted. They're nice and soft. There's nothing wrong with this. This is a perfect bloom. Now this one right here, this one's got some downturned petals. The center is starting to dry out, and that is definitely a blossom that is on the downward side. I want to take that out. I can pinch it down at the bottom right underneath that stem structure, or I can use my snips like I'm going to do today and snip that right there at the bottom, and that is all there is to it. That plant has been deadheaded, and it will no longer try to produce that seed, and it will tell the plant go ahead and keep making blossoms.
This is an example of an annual in my garden that does not necessarily need to be deadheaded, but aesthetically it will look better if I do. These are my snowland daisies. They are an annual daisy, and you'll see that I've got a beautiful mound of fresh blossoms on the top. But as I go down underneath into the layers, I'll have some spent blooms. Now I can leave those blooms, but it does look better if I take them out. And so I'm going to do that. I do that on a daily basis. That kind of helps me to keep up on the maintenance of this. And I just go to that first leaf node and I take those spent blossoms off. Now I do have some perennial flowers in my garden that can also benefit from some daily maintenance and deadheading, and this is one of those plants. These are my Stella d'Oro daylilies, and they will benefit from having some maintenance on a daily basis. Because their bloom only lasts one day, they go quickly through their cycle of life. So let me show you what you look for on a daylily when you are wanting to deadhead it.
Here is an example of a daylily stalk that has several bloom stages on it. I've got this bloom right here that is blooming today. It is fresh. And then these two right here are buds that will bloom in the next several days. And this is a spent bloom. I know that this is a spent bloom because it is soft and the edges are flared out. That was probably blooming yesterday. So to remove it, I am just pinching it right at the base. That keeps the stalk looking good and everything looking fresh. Now, eventually the bloom stalk will no longer have any more blooms or buds on it. And that is the case right here. There is nothing left on it that is fresh or ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and snip this one clear back into the canopy or the structure of the plant. I want to take that entire bloom stalk out. I wanted you to see a little closer up view of how I remove that spent bloom. It is right at the base, and then I will just continue doing that all through this flower bed, taking out any of those spent blooms and any of the flower stalks that are no longer producing. Eventually, this will not have any more growth on it, and it will start dying back. Now, these are perennial daisies, and they're new to my garden, so they're a little more difficult for me to tell when the flower is spent. But this right here is a good example. It's got a dried out center, and the petals on the outside edge are starting to change color. Now, this was not a great shot, and I do apologize, but I'm going to take these blooms off just like I did with the annual daisies, right at that first leaf node. And that is all there is to it for deadheading those perennial daisies. That should tell the plant it can regrow more blossoms.
Now let's talk about something called perennial cutback. You may have heard me say this or someone else in the gardening community. This is where you take a perennial, like the salvia right here, and you cut it back to help it re-bloom. Now, not all perennials will re-bloom in their season, but salvia are one of them, and so are Shasta daisies. And I have both in my yard, so I do want to cut them back as soon as they are done with their bloom cycle. You can tell that this one's done because the calyx on the top of the flower, where the flowers are actually at, is almost gone or nearly gone. I have a couple of them that have a little bit of blossom still on the end, but they are pretty much there. So I am just going to cut these back. I want to come down into the leaf canopy pretty far and take these all the way down. I want to promote growth and new growth. So taking those old spent blooms off will tell the plant that it's time to do something more. So I took this plant down pretty far. As I got into the canopy, I could see that there was some issues. It looks a little bit like powdery mildew, which I did not think that salvia could get. But I do have issues with that over in this area. A lot of my zinnias and even my zucchini have a problem with it. So I am just cleaning this plant up, hoping that the new growth that's down here, I can see that there's new growth down inside the center of this plant, that will do its thing, and maybe I'll get another set of blooms out of this, maybe not, but I just want a healthy plant. So that's another reason to cut back on your perennials, to make sure that they are healthy. And this one was certainly not a healthy plant. So I am sitting in front of my catmint or nepeta right here, and you can see I've got a bumblebee flying around me. He is actually eating on these flowers, so I do not want to take the calyx off of these just yet. Nepeta is one of those perennial flowers, just like the salvia, that if I do cut it back, I may get a rebloom cycle. And these I would cut back just about the same as I do salvia. Maybe not as harsh as I did that last one, because that one was diseased. But this one is closer than my other set. My other set is actually blooming pretty well yet. So I'm not going to touch these just yet, but that is another perennial plant that you can get some rebloom from if you cut it back early enough in the season. So I'm right here in front of my Rocky Mountain penstemon, and penstemon is one of those perennial flowers that you need to cut back the bloom stalks. These little calyxes right here, they have seed pods at the top of them. And once those seed pods start to dry out, they will release their seed, and you will have penstemon everywhere next year. So I want to take these seed stalks, or the calyx, all the way down at the bottom of the plant. These are done blooming. They will not rebloom this season. This is not for rebloom or growth. This is just to prevent those seed pods from dispersing their seeds. Now I do have a few bloom stalks like this one right here that still have quite a bit of color to them, so I will be leaving those. But everything else that has nothing left on it, or one or two flowers, I am not keeping those. So I'll just keep working on this until I've got this all cleaned up.
I decided to keep this footage, but just speed it up so you guys could watch as I took down this penstemon. It was pretty satisfying to take some of these stalks down. A lot of them were already laying on the ground. I do need to remember to stake them up or give them support next year. I also found a little bit of bug damage. I'll talk about that here in a minute. I did move on to my perennial salvia here, and I'm just cutting that back, hoping for rebloom. This bed does look a little bit sparser without those tall plants in the background, especially the penstemon and the salvia. They do provide quite a lot of color and structure in this bed, but of course there are plants that are starting to take over, like the Russian sage is just about ready to bloom, and of course those daisies in the center are stealing the show right now. But there is an important reason to grow both annuals and perennials in the same bed. My annuals will have color all season long, whereas my perennials will bloom at different times. Just like that dianthus is blooming and then it dies back and then the spirea takes over, I want to make sure that I am overlapping the colors of my plants and my bloom times so that they're all blooming at different times and I do not have a bed that is empty of color.
Well, friends, that's going to do it for us today. I am exhausted. We are no longer being protected by the cloud cover. It kind of just blew away, which is typical around here. We have high UV and the temperatures are approaching 90 right now. And for some reason, we feel very humid today. So I think we have rain in the forecast this afternoon and evening. So that is a possibility. But I do not know how any of you that have high temperatures and high humidity do anything outside. I would melt. But I hope this video has been helpful for you today. I feel like we as gardeners use the terms deadheading and cutting back, and we really don't define them too often. And I, as a new gardener, have had to do a lot of research on that to find out what things need to be deadheaded, when they need to be deadheaded, when they need to be cut back, when they need to be trimmed down, and how far, what types. So I thought maybe I'd show you what I have in my garden, how I do that. Now, by no means am I an expert on this, and in fact, I don't even pretend to be an expert on this. I'm sure there's other ways to cut things back and to deal with deadheading, but this is how I do it. And today I did find a couple of issues. My salvia, I believe that is powdery mildew, so I will need to treat for that. And then in my penstemon, I found slugs, so I'll need to bait for those. But anytime you find dead, dying, or just done flowers, you probably want to cut those back. That tells that plant you don't need to focus on repairing or dealing with this issue. I will help you out. We'll cut it back, and then you can focus on being healthy and putting out new growth and blooms. So I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please give it a thumbs up. That lets me know that you'd like more content like this. And if you're new to gardening, let me know in the comments down below if you'd like more videos like this that are a little more on the new to gardening type phase. But I wanted to share something I saw today in the garden and that I've never seen before, and maybe you can help me out here. I believe it was a swallowtail caterpillar. But the coolest thing ever, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to keep it or get rid of it. So, but I do have swallowtail butterflies in my garden, and so I do think that's what it is, and it's a caterpillar. So let me know in the comments down below if I'm correct in assuming that's a swallowtail caterpillar. But yeah, I wanted to do a garlic video today, a garlic harvest video. But I pulled one of my garlic bulbs a couple days ago, and it's pretty tiny still. The paper on the outside is getting there, but I think I want to give them about 2 more weeks, and then we will pull those. So probably the first or second week of August, we'll be pulling our garlic. But I hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like more content like this, please let me know in the comment section down below. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. We would love to have you part of our community. We hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.